Gentlemen, one of the greatest skills a man can develop is the ability to observe, truly observe, without asking, because a woman's past, her experiences, her scars, her intentions, her values, they're not always told. They're shown, subtly, quietly, repeatedly, and if you know what to look for, she'll tell you everything, without ever saying a word. Let's dive into how you can discover her past, without ever asking her a single question. If a woman is uncomfortable in calm environments, if she seems restless when everything is peaceful or constantly needs excitement, adrenaline, or even subtle chaos to feel engaged, it's often a signal that she has been conditioned by past relationships or experiences that were emotionally unstable. A lot of people mistake chaos for passion, and if she has only known love that came in the form of anxiety, overthinking, second guessing, betrayal, or unpredictability, then peace will feel foreign. To her, a relationship without arguments may feel like something is off, because she subconsciously equates emotional turbulence with emotional investment. She may unconsciously initiate tension just to confirm that you still care. This could come in the form of picking fights over minor things, creating distance just to see if you chase her, or making emotionally provocative statements to see your reaction. None of this is random. It's learned behavior from a past that trained her to expect love to come with confusion. It might be that she was previously with someone emotionally unavailable, who only showed attention during moments of crisis. So now she recreates crisis just to receive that same attention. Or perhaps she's been in toxic environments where silence meant punishment. So now when things are too quiet, she assumes something's wrong. If she constantly needs validation or stimulation, if she gets easily bored when things are calm, or feels the need to sabotage harmony to get a reaction, it's likely you're not just dealing with her present mindset. You're encountering the emotional scars of her past. This doesn't mean she's a bad person or beyond redemption, but it does mean that her nervous system is more familiar with chaos than peace, and that matters, because unless she becomes aware of that wiring and takes accountability for healing it, she will unknowingly pull you into patterns that don't belong to you. The more you observe her in moments of calm, when there's no conflict, no external distractions, no drama, the more you'll learn about her history. If she can sit in peace with you without looking for a storm to create, it means she's likely done some emotional work. But if she can't rest in that stillness, and instead pokes at you just to see if you'll flinch, you're not just seeing who she is now, you're seeing who shaped her. The past leaks into the present, not through confession, but through reaction. And it's in her discomfort with peace that you may find the loudest clues about where she's been. How a woman responds to your boundaries is one of the most revealing indicators of her past experiences, emotional conditioning, and her inner values. Boundaries are not just rules or preferences. They are declarations of self-respect. And when you set a boundary with a woman, whether it's as simple as not tolerating being interrupted, or as serious as refusing to be manipulated, her reaction is a direct window into what she's used to, what she expects, and how she's been shaped by previous relationships. A woman who was raised or loved in environments that respected her autonomy and honored her dignity will instinctively understand the purpose of boundaries. She may not always like them, but she'll recognize them as healthy. She won't take it personally when you say no. She won't guilt-trip you for needing space. She won't try to twist your standards into weaknesses. Instead, she'll meet your structure with maturity, even if it challenges her. But when a woman has a history of either crossing others' boundaries or being with men who lacked the courage to enforce any, she'll often respond to your limits with resistance, manipulation, or even passive-aggressive behavior. She might try to reframe your boundaries as you being too cold or controlling, when in reality, what's happening is your triggering discomfort rooted in her past. Maybe she's used to getting her way through charm or emotional pressure. Maybe her former partners were so desperate to keep her that they never said no. So when you do, she's not just reacting to you asterisk. She's reliving the power dynamics she's come to rely on. Watch for how she behaves when her desires don't align with your rules. Does she try to negotiate with respect? Or does she shame, withdraw, or provoke? These reactions will tell you everything you need to know. Because someone who respects herself and has done the inner work will also respect you, and the boundaries you set to protect your peace. You don't even have to make it about serious topics. Set small boundaries. Tell her you don't respond to texts when you're working. Say you need a day to yourself after a long week. Say no to an impulsive plan. These small, daily acts of self-leadership will reveal whether she can coexist with a strong man, or whether she only feels powerful in your absence of discipline. A woman who has manipulated others in the past will often see boundaries as an obstacle to control, not a natural part of intimacy. She may not know how to function in a dynamic where she isn't leading emotionally, and that discomfort will show in her tone, her reactions, her passive aggression, or her tendency to disappear until she feels she has leverage again. On the other hand, if she listens, asks questions, and adjusts even slightly to honor your boundaries, that's a woman who understands mutual respect. That's someone who may have had a turbulent past, but is choosing growth over control. Ultimately, her behavior around your boundaries isn't just about now. It's a broadcast of the rules she's used to playing by. You don't need to interrogate her history. Just set a line, then stand behind it. Her reaction will say more than any story ever could. The people she surrounds herself with are not just her social circle. They are the mirror of her internal world. A woman's past is deeply woven into the company she keeps, and if you want to understand where she's been, who she's been, and what kind of environment shaped her, all you need to do is quietly observe her friends and inner circle. Because no one consistently surrounds themselves with people who don't in some way reflect their values, behaviors, and mindset. People either outgrow or maintain their surroundings, and that alone tells a story. If a woman still keeps close friendships with people who constantly party, gossip, chase attention, or disrespect relationships, then that behavior isn't just tolerated, it's normalized. She may not do those things directly in front of you, but if her closest friends are entangled in chaos, drama, or reckless decisions, you have to question why she's still tied to them. Loyalty alone doesn't justify it. We all grow out of certain versions of ourselves, and if she hasn't, it means she hasn't truly evolved, or worse, she doesn't want to. Pay attention to how her friends talk about men, relationships, ambition, values, and other women. Are her female friends constantly trashing their boyfriends, glorifying manipulation, or encouraging her to be deceptive and secretive in the name of fun or freedom? If so, understand this. Even if she seems different, she is voluntarily marinating in an environment that sustains those behaviors. People don't just become the average of those they spend time with, they also reflect what they tolerate and allow into their energy. And if she hasn't distanced herself from negative influences, it means she still identifies with them. Now, if her friends are women who hold each other accountable, speak with purpose, honor their relationships, and aim for growth, you'll feel that energy instantly. It's in the way they carry themselves. It's in the conversations they have. It's in the way they speak about absence, self-respect, loyalty, and pain. Women who have gone through tough pasts, but transformed their mindset, won't align with people who remain stuck in toxicity. So, if she's truly moved forward from her past, her circle will be a reflection of that maturity. Also, observe how long she's had her friends. Long-term friendships can be powerful, but only if they've grown together. If her inner circle is made up of people she's known for years, but who still act like they're emotionally stuck in high school or college party culture, that's not just friendship, it's stagnation. Sometimes people stay attached to past versions of themselves because they're too afraid to face the loneliness that comes with outgrowing people. That fear often reveals an emotional dependency on the familiar, even when it's toxic. And if she's clinging to friendships rooted in her wild or reckless years, she might not be as far removed from those behaviors as she claims. Then there's how she acts with them. Does her personality shift when they're around? Does she become more immature, loud, attention-seeking, or careless when she's with certain friends? If she morphs depending on who she's with, that reveals internal instability. It shows she hasn't fully formed her own solid identity yet. And a woman who adapts her values to fit different groups is someone who hasn't yet confronted her true self. You're not just dating her. You're potentially inviting in every influence she refuses to release. Lastly, watch what she does when her friends mess up. Does she enable them, defend toxic behavior, laugh it off, or stay silent in moments where real character is being tested? Because silence in the face of bad behavior is still complicity. If she can't speak truth to her closest people, it's unlikely she'll hold herself accountable either. Her friend group is not a background detail. It's a living, breathing archive of her emotional history. Who she chooses to keep around is often who she still is, deep down. You don't need to scroll for hours or dig into every archived post to understand a woman's past. Her social media will speak volumes if you know how to read between the lines. The digital persona she presents to the world is not just a highlight reel. It's a curated reflection of what she values, what she seeks, and what she's hiding. In many ways, social media has become an emotional diary. Except it's not private. It's performative, and in performance there is always intention. Start by examining the overall vibe of her presence. Is it consistent? Is there depth? Or is it scattered, impulsive, and fueled by attention-seeking behaviors? If every post seems crafted to provoke reactions, whether through suggestive poses, vague captions, or emotionally manipulative content, understand that you're looking at someone who may have conditioned herself to find value in validation rather than substance. If her page is filled with thirst traps, filtered selfies, party photos, luxury aesthetics, and captions that scream, "Notice me," without ever really saying anything of depth, you're witnessing a digital expression of insecurity masked as confidence. This doesn't automatically mean she's a bad person, but it does suggest she may have a past shaped by a constant need for approval. Maybe she was ignored, overlooked, or emotionally neglected in real life, so she built a persona that would finally get the attention she never received. Maybe she dated men who only praised her appearance, so she began to anchor her worth in how she looked, not who she was. Over time, this habit becomes subconscious. She doesn't even post for herself anymore. She posts for the validation cycle. The likes, the comments, the DM, they're not just compliments. They're hits of dopamine, and a woman who depends on those hits is someone who hasn't truly detached from a past where her value was transactional. Now look at what's missing. Does she talk about her purpose, her struggles, her values? Does she ever post anything vulnerable, real, or reflective? Or is everything polished, posed, and edited for perception? The absence of authenticity is often more telling than any direct confession. If she's always on, always trying to show that she's winning, that she's happy, that she's desirable, it might be because she's still running from chapters of her life that made her feel the opposite. Social media becomes a fantasy world where she gets to rewrite her past, but in doing so, she's also revealing it. Overcompensation is a form of confession. Then there's the frequency. If she's constantly posting, updating, and performing, it may indicate that she's uncomfortable with being alone or unseen. A woman who is secure in her real life doesn't need to constantly project it online. But a woman who feels unseen in her private life often turns to public platforms to feel relevant, desired, or in control. This stems from a history of emotional starvation, where her identity was dependent on how others responded to her. That's not a problem she tells you about. That's a pattern you witness when her phone becomes more important than the moment you're sharing. Pay attention to the captions too. Are they cryptic? Attention. Baiting or laced with indirect jabs at past lovers or friends? Does she use phrases like loyalty is rare, trust no one, or people change? These aren't just words. They're emotional residues of betrayal, heartbreak, or unresolved pain. People use their captions to speak to ghosts, to lovers who are still watching, or to enemies they haven't fully confronted. You don't need her to explain the backstory. She's already revealing it. And if you observe closely, you'll start to piece together the timeline of her emotional evolution or stagnation, even the way she interacts with other people online, who she follows, who she comments on, how she engages with male attention. These are behavioral signals. Is she still liking and commenting on her ex's posts? Is she engaging in flirty conversations in public comment sections? Is she publicly praising male celebrities or influencers in overly sexual or objectifying ways? All of this paints a picture. You're not being insecure by noticing it. You're being aware, because social media is the one place where people unconsciously leave trails of who they used to be, who they wish they were, and who they pretend to be now. In short, if you know how to decode the language of social media, its timing, tone, and texture, you won't need to ask her about her past. She's already showing you. Every picture, every caption, every story. It's a breadcrumb on the trail of her emotional history. You just have to be still enough to read it. When a woman talks about her exes, or strategically avoids talking about them, you are not just getting a glimpse into her romantic history. You're getting access to her emotional maturity, her sense of accountability, her narrative control, and the lessons or lack thereof that she's carried forward from past relationships. The way she frames these men, whether as villains, fools, ghosts, or afterthought, tells you far more than a simple factual account of what happened. You're not looking for gossip. You're listening for patterns, because the language she uses is often an emotional blueprint of who she is under pressure, under betrayal, under heartbreak, and whether she owns her part in the fall or simply replays the same victim loop. If every man in her story is abusive, crazy, controlling, toxic or immature, and she paints herself as the perpetual innocent, untouched by flaw, then you have to pause. Because it's statistically and emotionally improbable for someone to have multiple failed relationships with zero contribution of their own. That doesn't mean she's lying. It means she may be blind to her own role in those dynamics. And that blindness is dangerous. Why? Because someone who hasn't reflected on why things went wrong will likely repeat the same behaviors. If she was cheated on, but never reflects on the red flags she ignored or the cycles she enabled, she hasn't learned. If she was manipulated, but only ever speaks in terms of what he did, rather than what I allowed, then she's still emotionally frozen in that chapter, and people who haven't healed their past often invite others to reenact it. On the other side, if she never speaks of her exes at all, if it feels like there's an intentional wall, a calculated silence, don't assume it's maturity. Sometimes that silence is protection, not of you, but of an image she wants to maintain. Some women avoid talking about their past because they're ashamed of who they were, or because the truth would contradict the persona they've crafted for you now. That avoidance is just as revealing. When someone is too careful not to say anything, it usually means there's something significant they don't want you to know. Maybe she was the one who cheated. Maybe she was the one who sabotaged something real. Or maybe she stayed in a dysfunctional relationship far too long and hasn't forgiven herself for it. Silence isn't just absence, it's concealment, and concealment is a form of communication. Also, observe how emotionally reactive she gets when talking about an ex. If she still speaks with anger, bitterness, sarcasm, or wounded pride, then the past is not in the past. It's alive in her nervous system. You can feel it in her voice. You can see it in her eyes. A woman who has truly moved on will speak of her past with neutrality. Not affection, not hatred, just acknowledgement. But if she uses the mention of an ex to elevate herself, to prove a point, or to manipulate your perception of her, she hasn't healed. She's performing. Look for emotional responsibility. Does she ever say things like, "I could have handled that differently," or "I didn't know myself back then"? These statements are gold. They show growth, self-awareness, humility. A woman who can own her part in a failed relationship is far less likely to repeat the same dynamics. She's not just reacting anymore, she's reflecting. But if she plays the same script for every man who came before you, assuming they were all the problem, then eventually you'll see what they saw. You'll feel the pressure of being the next chapter in a book she never rewrote. Another key thing to watch for is how she compares you to them, even subtly. If she says things like, "You're not like the others," or "I've never been treated this way before," pay attention. It might sound flattering, but it's also a clue. It tells you what kind of men she's chosen in the past, and what kind of behavior she once accepted. If her standards were low, chaotic, or emotionally destructive, you need to ask yourself, has she really evolved? Or is she just with you because you're different and the novelty hasn't worn off yet? Because when that comfort sets in, when she no longer needs to impress you, the deeper emotional habits often return. Even what she laughs about matters. If she jokes about being crazy in her last relationship, or brags about how she drove him mad, or tells stories where manipulation and emotional games are normalized, don't let the humor distract you. People often tell the truth through jokes. Pay attention to those moments when her guard is down, and she's reminiscing without realizing she's confessing. You'll find her past isn't hidden. It's just dressed in casual words and emotional distance. In essence, when a woman speaks about her exes, she's showing you her emotional literacy, and when she avoids it, she's showing you her fear, her guilt, or her control over the narrative. Either way, she's speaking volumes. All you have to do is listen, not just to her words, but to what they protect, what they expose, and what they silently scream. Because her history with men doesn't begin or end with them. It lives in her, in how she explains them, and in what she chooses to remember or rewrite. Watch closely how she treats people who have no influence, no authority, and no ability to give her anything. This includes waiters, cleaning staff, delivery drivers, old people, children, cashiers, and even animals. It is in these subtle, everyday interactions, when no one is watching and there's nothing to gain, that her truest character emerges. Because how someone treats the weak or the powerless reveals the values they hold at their core. Anyone can be kind to someone who benefits them. Anyone can be polite when the stakes are high or the environment demands it. But kindness, empathy, and respect shown toward those who offer no reward in return are a deep insight into a person's history and inner wiring. A woman who's experienced hardship but developed emotional intelligence through that pain will usually treat others with a quiet dignity. She will not see status as the determining factor of someone's worth. She will say thank you to a janitor the same way she would to a CEO. She will not need an audience to be decent, and you will feel that presence. It is calm, grounded, and real. She may not talk much about her past, but the way she honors people around her who are often ignored or invisible tells you she's either been in that position herself or has been raised to understand that value is not tied to appearance, power, or popularity. That is the kind of history you don't need to ask about, because she lives her values instead of announcing them. Now contrast that with a woman who is short, tempered, dismissive, or passive, aggressive with those she considers beneath her. Maybe she doesn't say thank you. Maybe she looks at her phone while ordering food without making eye contact. Maybe she raises her voice when a mistake is made, or rolls her eyes when someone doesn't understand her immediately. These are not just behavioral red flags. They are psychological revelations. They tell you that she may have grown up in environments where status, performance, or dominance were more important than character. She may have learned that power is a tool to be flexed, not a responsibility to be humbled by. If she looks down on others when she thinks no one important is watching, it means she carries an inner narrative of superiority, entitlement, or hidden resentment. Pay even closer attention in social settings, group dinners, shopping experiences, public spaces. How does she treat the server when the food is wrong? Does she handle the situation with grace or with condescension? Does she gossip about people who are not around to defend themselves? Does she speak over others, especially if they're quiet or socially awkward? These aren't just moments. They're windows into a deeper behavioral pattern. A woman who is used to superficial circles, validation-based environments, or narcissistic dynamics in her past may feel the need to establish dominance or elevate herself at the expense of others, even subtly. That tendency is rarely talked about, but it's deeply ingrained. Also, take note of how she talks about people from her past who didn't have power over her ex, friends, co-workers, roommates, even former teachers. Does she mock them, diminish their memory, refer to them as stupid, annoying, or useless? Or does she speak of them with respect, even if they had flaws? That perspective shows emotional growth. If she still needs to belittle someone to feel strong, she hasn't grown beyond her past. She's still fighting it in her head. And if she was the kind of person who once stepped on others to rise and never faced the consequences, she'll likely do it again when the time is right. Watch her around children and the elderly. Does she talk down to them, or does she meet them with patience and presence? A woman who treats a child with curiosity instead of annoyance, or who listens to an elderly person with care, reveals a heart that knows how to slow down, empathize, and respect life beyond its productivity. That kind of woman has either healed from a fast, shallow life or never fell into it. In either case, that patience is a reflection of inner peace and strong roots. Even how she treats animals is telling. Is she kind, gentle, or indifferent? Does she display fake affection for show? Or is there a natural ease in her care? People often project their unresolved emotions onto animals. And if she is cold, careless, or uncomfortable around them, it could indicate an emotionally guarded or repressed inner world, possibly shaped by a past where emotional expression was unsafe or foreign. You don't need to ask her about her past relationships, family trauma, or what kind of girl she used to be. Just sit quietly and watch her in the unnoticed moments, how she reacts when she doesn't have to impress, how she speaks when she thinks it doesn't matter, how she behaves when there is no performance involved. That's when her past shows itself, not through story, but through instinct. And those instincts are the loudest, rawest, and most honest version of her history you will ever get. So if you truly want to understand a woman's past, don't ask, interrogate, or dig for confessions. Instead, observe. Let her actions speak where her words remain silent. Her habits, reactions, friendships, and silent choices will reveal more than any story ever could. The past doesn't hide its echoes. And those echoes are everywhere if you learn to listen with your eyes, not just your ears. A wise man doesn't demand answers. He reads the unspoken truth.